Dean, I reached out to you because I saw your podcast, I saw your content, and I was like, do you know what? This seems like a pretty interesting guy. And I really want to just learn a little bit more around your story over the last couple of years. Where does it start? Like 2 years ago, what happened from Dean that sat with me today to 2 years ago where you were working in a job and you were like, maybe this job isn't for me. Maybe this isn't the life for me.
So like 2 years ago was almost like the culmination of what I would probably say is like a decade of feeling like I was never quite in the right place. And you've done tech sales. Anyone who has ever done tech sales will know that, or maybe not everyone, like a lot of people do tech sales and love it. But like for me and for, many, many people I know who have done it, it's so lucrative. It pays the bills. You can have a fantastic life. You can in your mid early 20s live like a king compared to a lot of people in, the public sector. I know a lot of people who are nurses and so on. So I feel like it's always important to caveat with that and say like what a privileged position to be in and to complain about something like that and to be like, oh, I don't have my purpose. But I just knew it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, despite all the luxuries and things it afforded me. And 2 years ago was kind of just like the tipping point, I think, because I had like 6, 7, 8 years building up to that. And so I wanted to explore something different. I always knew, even when I was getting like big paychecks and living good, that I just felt like I don't want to do this my whole life. This can't be it. I can't just be 50 or 60 and still be climbing the ranks in tech sales. It's just
Did you find yourself like looking at people that have been at the company longer and being like, if I stay on the path that I'm on now, I'm going to be them in the future? And it was never anything against them, but it's just like that, like, is that what I want? Like, that's going to be me in 20 years. Like, is that it?
Yeah. And the answer for me was no. I couldn't continue knowing that was where it was going. And I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I didn't know what was the path to victory, but I knew it wasn't that. And I often get asked now that I've got to fast forward and kind of give you the spoiler, like now I've got a business. It's like virtually 98% automated. It makes like 7, 8, 9 grand a month, which is like plenty of money, and I don't say that to brag. I more so share that very candidly so people can realize that with a bit of work, you can really leverage your life in a totally different way. So again, it's not to brag. And then because I share my story about that, people will often ask like, what do you do? How do you start? Where do you go? How do you get into something like that? And the answer for me was I just got roped into an event. My friend was going to an event and he was like, Dean, I think property is a really good way to get out of our 9-to-5s. And I went to the event and so we walked into this room and where was it again? It was in Shoreditch somewhere in London. It was like a big theater. I walked in, maybe like 100 seats, and one person after another would get up on the stage and give you a full spiel on why this particular strategy in property
Really
is the one you should buy.
Oh my God.
And like, my God, they use some good sales tactics.
Yeah.
I remember, right? It was like, they'd say, and you have to sign up and go to the other side of the room, give your details. And this is only going to last for 2 more minutes. So are you going to be one of the people who stands up? And I was like, shit, am I going to be one of the people? Yeah. And you don't want to be sold sometimes. You don't want to like feel like they got you. But anyway, one of the guys who got up, I really did buy into him. I bought into the strategy. I saw that it was a strategy that could be implemented and automated, which is what I want. I didn't want to be in the world of property. I wanted to be free. That's what I wanted. I didn't care what the vehicle was. I just didn't want to have to do sales. That was my driver. So I bought the course. And here we are.
And then there's a bit of context there in terms of the course itself cost, what was it, 15,000, or there's a total sum of something around 15,000. And as you started the strategy, there was then I think another 20k or so invested. So at this point you're like 35, nearly 40 grand in the hole.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it all plain sailing at that point?
The in-between part that I mentioned there, there's a lot to it. And the path was paved with some rocky, turbulent days. So you are absolutely correct. The course was 2.5K. A subsequent upsell of 13K.
Shock.
Yeah, you could buy the course, and then when you get and do the course like a month later, and you go to the place where they host it, it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're not really going to be able to do this unless you get mentored, and the mentoring costs 13K. So I was like, all right, well, fuck it. All I want is to not do sales. I don't want to do sales. So bought that. And then the strategy, I'm not going to bore the person listening by explaining the property strategy in great detail, but in a short burst, effectively what I was doing was renting properties so I could then sublease them out on the likes of Airbnb, Booking.com, and do that. It's the same business model as WeWork, except just on a much smaller scale. They rent out big blocks from developers, and then they re-rent it out to businesses. Same idea. So it is a legal strategy. You do it through a limited company and so on. And that's what they teach you. And then they teach you how to operationalize and automate the business. So in order to rent a property, it costs deposit, it costs, the first month's rent, and then you've got to furnish it. You've got to make it look like this beautiful studio so you can take photos with it. So that costs a lot of money. So I took 2 deals on top of that 15K that I'd spent, and now I was 40K in the hole, right?
You're in deep now.
And now I'm in, but I didn't care, man. I had a lot of money saved from sales. I was ready to spend. All I cared was get passive income. That old chestnut that everyone talks about on the internet. I've now since realized nothing is truly passive, but there is investments and so on. But I just wanted to get money coming in, and I was prepared to spend money to get it. And then, anyway, I was 40K in the hole at that point, but I was scared. I was like, shit, geez, I hope this works, And then those deals started to not work. So the rent I was due to pay every month cost more than what I was pulling in from the guests who were coming to stay at the properties. That's a horrible position to be in, man. Financial stress is like a weird kind of all-encompassing stress that is with you from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. You might be thinking about it a little bit less or a little bit more, but it's always there. Always there. And I would not wish it on anyone. And so I basically thought I'd fucked everything. I thought I was completely screwed. And I've
been scammed from one of these, because that's what you hear though, right? You hear the concept of passive income, make money online, all of these things, property, Airbnb, that sounds like a scam, right? But you're living proof that these things are real. They do work. Yes, there's an amount of investment needed and it's not guaranteed and it's scary and it's difficult and you can find yourself with these financial stresses, but it is something that there is a possibility. It is a route that people can take.
Yeah, exactly. But what's happened there is maybe a product of my impulsiveness. And I took 2 deals that I probably shouldn't have because I was impatient. I wanted to leave sales now. I wanted it all now. And I've since learned that patience is one of the, greatest gifts you can have in this game, to just wait a little bit. And so at that point, then the worst possible thing that could have happened. And I got fired from my job. And it was because I was working too much in the business, because I was so all consumed by this absolute hole I got myself into. So it was a bit of a spiral. It was like looping back on itself and causing all these other issues. So then my income stream was taken away from me. And now this is probably 1 year ago? No. Maybe a year and a half ago now. And all I wanted was to claw the money back. I was absolutely petrified. Then I lost my job. I was like, oh, bollocks. Excuse my French.
What a fucking day.
Yeah. I remember my manager, he called me on and he was like, I could tell there was something up with him. I was like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
But I actually still didn't click with me that he was about to say what he said. He was like, Dean, I just think there's something, I need to just say it. And I was like, what's he going to say? He goes, we're terminating your contract. And I was like, oh my God. What? And so then the fears were 10x'd right there.
What happened later that day then? because like that could have been a pivotal moment where you could have just gone, okay, I need to go back into a 9 to 5. I need to find a job. But actually, that in itself became such a pivotal moment where you've gone, fuck it, I'm going to go all in on this thing, right? And that's seemingly totally transformed your life, because now you're someone that is advocating for more people to make that moves, albeit yours is you've had some kind of transition where you're working on both of these things, right?
Yeah.
But then the decision was somewhat made for you to like,
Yeah.
go all in, go 100%, right? And now you're advocating for people to what, consider a life outside of the normal 9 to 5.
Yeah. So between that point and where I am now, I clawed all that money back. I turned my business around. I got it to a point where the operations were smoother. My risk profile was a lot less. So therefore I was less exposed. I clawed all that money back. I broke even. And now I can pay myself. And the business, I've learned so much through running this business for the past 2 years now. And I've hired very well and delegated very well and brought on some fantastic team members that they can run that for me. And I have their support. And now since that, now I'm kind of here. I've got the passive income, quote unquote. And I was like, what do I want to give of myself now? Because I'm not particularly interested in scaling this to the moon. What do I want to spend my time on? Because it's great going to the Bahamas and having a pina colada for all of eternity, but people like yourself and myself would get bored quite easily. It's nice to be doing something. And so I was also quite reluctant to like, hey, buy a property course off me, because I don't want to make somebody get into property. Again, this is just something I did to not do sales. It's all it was for me, and I've learned so much in business and, like scaling, all that stuff. And so this is when I started to realize I have a message to share. A lot of people feel like I felt, trapped, stuck to a job. It pays so well. It's all so good. It's all just about bearable enough. Those kinds of people like you and I are like so close to tipping over. They just want something. They want to believe they can do it. They want to believe that it's possible. They want to believe that, and they also want ideas, and they want to see ways they can do it. And I'm not going to say I understand every person super well. I'm trying to help them, but I just believe that is something that everyone can do. Everyone can create their own business and supplement that income that they're getting from their job. And a lot of people, if given the chance to click their fingers, if you ask the person listening right now, would you stop doing your job tomorrow if you had the exact same income coming in elsewhere? What are they going to say?
I think a lot of people would say yes. I think the reason that they don't is something called the beta region theory, or beta region paradox even, which is this really interesting concept that I think nearly everyone listening will resonate to in some way.
Yeah.
And it's that when you're, and I'll use the example of being in a job, but it's when you're in a job that is not bad, you don't love it, but it's not bad enough that it's so severe that it gives you the motivation to leave. So you're just doing enough to get by, but you're not doing enough to ever be fulfilled. And it's that middle ground between, if it was really bad and there was a lot of discomfort and you really fucking hated it, then the motivation would be there for you to be like, I want to get out of this. And it sounds like you had that, where there was such a level of discomfort being like, I'm not fulfilled here. This isn't giving me what I want. Whereas I feel like, and what this beta region paradox talks about, is just that most people are stuck in the middle ground. It's just enough, but it's not giving me enough. So there's not the motivation to actually make that change.
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of it is down to belief. Like if you believed that you could do that and you could do it in a year or two, you'd probably do it tomorrow. You'd probably get going. I just think a lot of people have blockers in their mind from ever even considering it and saying like, oh, that's for someone on the internet. That's not for me. That's for all these people online.
I think it comes from who, Like I work in the space of social mobility, and a big phenomenon that we've noticed is something called the network advantage, which is this phenomenon whereby you can't be what you can't see. So the more you have around you, if you have
Mm,
access to a load of, in this case, it's like professionals or people doing something, whether it's being in the property business, whether it's being a business owner, an entrepreneur, or even just having like some kind of professional traditional role. If you have lots of people around you like that, you're more likely to be aware of opportunities, apply to those opportunities, and then actually succeed in those opportunities. Whereas if you come from a background or a life similar to myself, where I don't really see anyone that is doing the thing like you're doing, for example, then it's really hard to, one, even know that it exists,
yeah.
but two, have the confidence and the motivation or the support in the networks to actually go and do it. And I found this recently, like even just trying to step into the content creation world, and I don't know anyone doing those things. So it's really hard for me to go, that's what I want to do, because you don't have anyone that's doing it.
Mm,
And I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things that relates to people or the person listening now, where they're in their 9 to 5. It's because maybe they don't see anyone not doing that, right?
yeah. Yeah. And I'm consider myself fortunate to have had the friend who brought me to the networking event that time, or the
Mm.
property event.
So you could actually see people
Yeah.
doing the thing.
But one thing I would say to that person is a small step that you can take today to do that, to surround yourself by that, is to start curating your social feed and start to like follow people who have business advice for you. Follow people who have walked the path you would like to walk. That is going to start drip feeding this idea that it's possible for you
Mm.
to do this. Because right now you might not realize that it is possible. And in the same way you water a plant and it grows over time, you need to be drip fed this idea that it's possible. And then maybe in a month or in 2 months, you'll try. And that will cascade this whole chain of events that will eventually get to you to where you want to be. And you can trace all these things back to a small step, like I'm following X person today.
Mm. I think people also need to consider the identity shift that they're going to have to go through as an individual. Have you had to transforms, maybe not the right word, evolve how you see yourself? And it
Yeah.
kind of goes back to that beliefs, right? Have
Yeah.
you had to try and change your identity as someone that does identify as a business owner, an entrepreneur, as someone that doesn't do the norms of the 9 to 5?
I love that question because it's such a good, it's the right question to be thinking about if you're somebody who wants to leave a 9 to 5, is thinking how you view yourself. Right now, you might not think that you are capable of being a business owner. I didn't. I did not fancy myself as being a business owner at all. And I think your identity, how you view yourself, and therefore how you act because of how you view yourself, is kind of dictated by your last 3 months. You have a view of yourself based on what you've been doing. So, for example, I view myself as somebody who is fit and active. I work out. I have a business. I view myself as an entrepreneur. Because why? Because I've been doing it for a little while now. I've been working out for a little bit. I've had a business for a little bit, and I've been doing those things. Whereas right now, if you're in a 9 to 5 and you've not taken any action whatsoever, it's going to be unlikely that you will view yourself as those things because you haven't taken the actions yet to start to shift the narrative in your head and to shift your identity and how you view yourself.
Mm.
And so sometimes, I think with this in particular, action is what's needed first. And then the identity shift comes over time.
Comes naturally throughout it. Interesting. When I started doing this podcast again and thinking about trying to add on all these things, it was like I was trying to make that transition before I'd started, and all I was doing is coming up against mental barriers and reasons why I shouldn't do it. And it was only through I know it sounds so cliche, but it was only through taking action and doing the thing that I started to believe, oh, maybe this is something that I can actually do. What other reasons do you think people should start to consider changing their situation now and maybe starting to look towards something that they're a little bit more passionate about?
I think when I think about, right, I'm going to give you an example, right? So the title of my podcast that I've created, it was originally called Quittable, but I've since rebranded to Work Worth Doing. A whole other reason as to why that is. But the idea behind Work Worth Doing is I believe in today's world, with the way the world runs on money, and you have to work at something. You have to do something with your time, right? And somebody in a 9 to 5 now might be just happy on that path. And if they are, great. But if you're not, you've got to just be real with yourself and recognize that the path you're on, the work you're doing now, is going to get you to X place. And X place might be, I'm 60 and I regret not changing. So instead, you can shift to the work that you do that will get you towards a different place. Maybe the work that you need to do right now is, like I said a moment ago, just curating your social feed, following a few different people that will over time help you get to a different place that you want to get to.
Yeah. Another way of looking at that, in what you're saying in terms of like, is this the path I want to go on, or is this the path I want to go on? Chris Williamson said at his event a couple of weeks ago, it's not necessarily about trying to make the right decision. It's choosing your regrets, which is a slightly different way of looking at it.
Love that.
And I tried to, I was just looking at my notes now, but I tried to put this into like he told it in a really good way of a story, but I can't remember exactly. So I've tried to recreate a bit of a story around it.
Let's do it.
And it goes through where it says, imagine you're standing at a fork in the road. Down one path, you stay in the job you hate, safe, steady, but every day you feel stuck wondering, what if? Down the other path, you take the risk, you quit, you chase your passion, but you face uncertainty, hard work, and the potential to fail. Either way, there's discomfort, right? Both of those paths are going to suck in some way, but the discomfort is either the regret of never trying or the struggle of building something new. And what he means by this is life isn't necessarily about avoiding the regrets. It's actually choosing which regrets you're willing to live with. And I heard that and I was scrambling to get my notes out on my phone, being like, wow, because it's just a slightly different way of looking at it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, choose your discomfort. Life sucks. It's to be human is to suffer in some capacity or another. Using the example of the gym in the morning. If you go to the gym, you'll suffer the intensity of a workout. If you don't, you'll suffer the regret of knowing that you didn't do what you're supposed to do that day.
Yeah, I've never regretted going to the gym. I've always regretted the times that I'm like, oh, I should have gone to the gym, man. Why didn't I go? Why didn't I go?
And this is no different as it relates to your career path, your choices, where you're heading. Like, you're on a certain path right now. What you're doing right now will get you to a certain place. And, you know, if you kind of zoom out, have a look ahead, you'll see where that was going to be. If you start taking different actions now, that path ahead looks very different, depending on what you're doing right now. Simple.
And you got to choose which one. And this is what this is what we were speaking about in the cafe beforehand as well. And I was trying to use the Matrix film to try and tell us.
Yeah.
But I fumbled it. So maybe you can help out because I'm probably going to fumble it again. But it's like in the film they have these like two pills, right? And one is one path and one is another path. And I find myself thinking about that quite a lot because as when I have struggling days on this new journey, on this new path I'm on, I then have to remind myself when I'm asking the questions of, oh, should I keep going? Why am I even doing this? I have to remind myself, I know what the other pathway looks like. I've already lived that life and I already know that it doesn't fulfill me. And for you listening now, ask yourself that same question. Like, is this the path that I necessarily want to go on? Knowing I know what it looks like. Or should you and I start considering what this other path could look like? And again, it comes back to choose your regrets on both of those things.
I think if you can lean into that regret, that imagined regret enough, it's painful. If you can lean into being 80, 70 and just thinking to yourself, I didn't really try. I never did it.
That kills me.
If you can lean into
that's hard, right?
That's, you know, it's I think cliche things are cliche because they're said so often, but they're said so often because they're good. And this is
True.
what I'm about to
Yeah.
say is no different. You only have one life. And that person who's 80, why the regret stings so much is because they know they only had one chance and they didn't do anything about it.
Mm.
Like, that gives me shivers, man. That actually makes me, and I think I'm fortunate because I did dwell on that quite a lot. And I'm glad I did, because that's just so petrifying, man.
Mm.
To get to that point and be
I'd say that's my biggest driver right now
Yeah.
is the potential and future regret. I want to minimize any regret in the future. David McIntosh, that was on episode 1, sat in the studio, was talking about like the rocking chair theory or something similar, and he
Right.
says that when he's older and you're frail and you're stuck in a chair, all you're going to have is the cinema of your own memories to reflect back on. He was like, you're only going to regret not making that movie a good movie to think back on and watch. And I think what he means by that is like, we need to make sure that we're living the life the most we can now. So when we are old and we're sat in the rocking chair, imagine just looking back in your memories being like, never really tried and never really did anything.
I like that.
That's all you're going to sit with for the final years of your life. Or you could look back when you're old, and I was about to say bold, but I think I'm already there now. Looking back, just thinking that was incredible.
Yeah.
And I think for you listening now, like what could you do? What would you regret? And what things would you be okay with living in terms of regrets?
But it is hard, because as soon as you think about those regrets, you're then faced with all the reasons why you shouldn't try. Oh, but my finances. Oh, but what if it doesn't work?
Life like the reality of life slaps you in the face of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, some people will have it a lot easier. I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage. I'm just about as flexible and irresponsible as you can be. And I appreciate somebody who has kids. It's harder to do. It is harder to take on extra workload. I think what I would say to someone who is in that position and who feels like they don't have time, because time is like time's precious, right? Is just figure out what time you do have and what can you do in that time. For me, that looked like 10 hours per week. That's what I was prepared to do. I didn't want to go full Alex Hormozy and just cut off my life and lock myself into a dark room for 27 hours a day.
Yeah. Like he must be mentioned in every podcast I do now.
Yeah. He's such a big influence in
Yeah.
so many people's lives. And I mean, I certainly take a lot from him. However, I think you can take a lot from somebody without wanting to be like them. I wouldn't want to live Alex Hormozy's life. I want to live my life, which is different. And so I designed my business. I designed what I was doing in such a way that was sustainable for me. Because I know if I work 23 hours a day, I'm going to want to jump off a bridge. I won't like that. I want to do it in a way that works for me, that I can still see my people, that I can still go out for, a meal one of the days in the week. And so what that looked like was just saying, okay, 10 hours. I'm going to do Monday to Thursday, 5 to 7, 2 hours on the business after my 9 to 5. And then on the weekend, I'm going to knock out another 2 hours. That's sustainable,
And it's going towards something that you enjoy doing and the lifestyle that you want as well.
Yeah.
I was doing some public street interviews the other day, and some of the questions were around, do you have to love your job to be happy? And mixed responses to that. I presume everyone would be like, yes, but not many people I asked said they enjoyed their job. They didn't say it on camera, but it was like a bit of pre-talking, right? And they were like, but I'm still happy. Or some of them were like, my job's okay and I'm okay in life. And I think the outcome from a lot of these conversations, and some of them will be released early next year, was you don't have to love everything that you do, but everything you do should enable you to do the things that you love. So I don't want the person listening now, you listening now, to think, I have to enjoy everything. I have to always be doing and following my passion, because I don't always think it's realistic. But I do think that the things that you do, albeit, let's say, your career, if your career enables you to do the things that you do love doing outside of work, I also think that's a good outcome as well?
To each their own.
Mm.
You know, if you don't have a great love for your career, but you're content with what it gives you, why change? Don't change. Like, if you're enjoying your life, don't feel there is no pressure to change. This is unique to you. You know what is right for you. If you are happy and content and your life is as you wish it to be, do not change. Don't move anything. Don't fuck it up. You've got a good thing.
Mm.
I say this to you if you are craving change. If you walk into work every day and you open your laptop and you just think, what the fuck am I doing? That's who this is for. And I know that the vast majority, maybe not vast, but certainly a large majority, feel that way about what they do. And it's very hard for them to feel good about getting that shitty email from somebody in procurement.
Welcome to my life.
And as you know, in sales, as many people who have worked in sales will know, it's stressful. It's good for many reasons. I'm not going to get into them, but it's very stressful. There's always a target on your back, quite literally. And you get hailed and praised for this fleeting moment when something good happens. And then it disappears. And the next day, you got to do it again. And that's kind of a metaphor for life, right? It's, you know, there's good in that. But sometimes I would just sit back and think to myself, what is this all for? Where am I going with this? And that was painful, man. That was painful enough for me to take a plunge that
hit the threshold higher enough for you to go, I need to make a change. Same as Tommy that you interviewed on your podcast.
Yeah.
He said that he had such a high level of discomfort and pain of his current life that was the motivator to change. I do fear though that a lot of the people you listening now, I feel I put myself in this for the large part of my career, still in that beta, what's it called, beta region paradox, where you're like, you are in the middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
How do people then go from stuck in the middle ground, do you think, to realizing that it is enough pain to move?
Great question. Because that's hard to go from that, because why would you? You have it so good. You have everything you need. That's why it's so hard to leave. And that's why I feel quite passionate about
Do
this.
you have everything you need though? Or do you have enough to be comfortable, but it's not fulfilling everything? And I suppose that's the question that everyone that you listening now needs to ask yourself is, are you getting everything?
You have enough to keep you subdued. And companies are very good at keeping you happy because you are there to serve a purpose for them. It's like, as a business owner myself with employees, I recognize that now. Employees are super valuable. So of course you're going to take care of them. And so because you're so taken care of, why take the risk? That's the biggest obstacle. Because what I've just said, where you open your laptop and you feel this sense of, what am I doing? It's so hard to act on that when you've got all this perceived risk. But I firmly believe, I really believe this, is that there is zero risk to just trying. You can mitigate everything. You can keep it quiet. You don't have to tell your boss. You don't have to quit prematurely or get fired prematurely like some of us in the room. You can do it gently, and you can try and just dip your toes in the water. And on the one hand, I almost fear that isn't the environment that will make you push through when it gets difficult, because I almost feel like it has to be really hard for you to get through it. Like for me, when I got fired, and then I was like, oh my God. But just trying. There is no risk to trying. There is only upside.
I'd say there's also sacrifice that comes with trying though. Because like at the
Mhm.
moment, I am in a 9 till 5 still, and I'm trying to do this on the side. So
Yeah.
I've had to sacrifice social life, dating, a lot of other things
Yeah.
that now I don't have time to do. And I'm probably not the best family member, friend right now because I'm all consumed in this.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that cost of entry of price to do business.
Yeah.
I know that that's something that I'm okay with because it's in the short term.
Yeah.
I still think people should consider taking the risk, but also acknowledging and recognizing that there is a level of sacrifice that comes, particularly when you're trying to balance both of those things at the same time.
I feel like in people's minds, from people I speak to, they imagine that there is all this risk and that their life could crumble if, they attempt it. Well, what if my boss finds out, and what if I lose everything? Like me.
Yeah.
But you don't have to dive in and be really impatient and impulsive like me. You can do it gently. And when I say there's no risk, I just say there's no risk to what you have now. You're not going to lose your house, your mortgage, or anything like that. Just don't. You don't have to be an investor like I do, like I did. You don't have to invest all your money in things. You can start a business with no money. One thing I preach a lot, I hate that word, but one thing I say a lot
Mm.
is you have skills, right? Each of us has a skill set, and you're probably being paid for it right now by a company. For you, it was sales. For me, it was sales. And underneath the umbrella of sales, you have negotiation skills. You can present very well. You can manage your pipeline. You can close it, like all this stuff. There's a whole list of skills that come underneath that. And those skills are transferable into the real world, and you can create income from those skills. So, for example, let's imagine somebody's a bookkeeper and they manage the accounts. You don't have to do that for just a company. You could get 10 clients for yourself, create a limited company and make your logo and all that other stuff as well. But at the end of the day, you can do that for 10 individual clients if you just close 10 deals. And if you automate the business a little bit, you can work a hell of a lot less than you do at your company, and with a hell of a lot less quote unquote responsibility. You don't have to like answer to somebody. You can work when you want. And that, like for me, Adam, when I when I get up in the morning, I work because I choose to. I don't have to work anymore. I could stop right now and just live off this. And that choice is something I believe it's more powerful than it might sound, to be in that position, to get up in the morning and to be able to lie in until 12 if I want.
Yeah.
No, I don't do that, but I can. And I think everyone should taste that.
I'm just trying to find a quote from one of your guests. God, I think it's like Caulfield or Cofield said
Joe
it.
Caulfield.
Joe Caulfield said the greatest gift that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. What a fucking sentence.
What a quote. That's why I called the
That's
podcast
yeah.
Work Worth Doing. Because I just think what a beautiful sentiment.
Mm. The person listening now, they're hearing this and you're thinking, "Oh, maybe there is something that I want to do." How do you start to identify what are things that, one, you're passionate about, but two, can be monetized?
Mm.
Because there's a big difference here, I think, between I want to just do things I enjoy, albeit there's always going to be tasks that you don't enjoy. But if you're going to be doing it full time and step into creating a business around it, then the thing needs to be monetizable.
Sure.
Let's talk about that. And equally as well, it's like, how do you stop then your passion becoming something that you have to make money from and it taking away from the passion at the same time?
Mm-hmm. A great way to think about this. So you can do two things. So what I did was I sorted myself out financially and then figured out my passion. So I created the property business, fucked it up, regained it, and then I have all this free time. Now I'm focusing on something I'm passionate about, which is sharing this message to others that they can also attain said freedom.
Mm.
And that starts for me. I was thinking to myself a couple of months ago, I was sitting there on the laptop thinking, what is my next move? I don't want to grow this business. What do I do? And a great way to figure out what your next move might be is to think about what you actually care about. What do you know? What have you been through? What matters to you?
And also, what's your competitive advantage? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
have you been through in life that gives you an edge over someone else?
Exactly. And we have a beautiful medium now, and it sits in our pocket, and you can share a message very easily. Like creating a content business costs you nothing. You can share a message, and you can share your message. People will buy into you. And that can be something that can be monetized over time, but you can just enjoy doing that. You don't have to put pressure on it to like monetize it. So, for example, Tommy, who was on the podcast, he was like playing a long game with that. He started posting about something that he cared about because he knew eventually this would create leverage for him. But on the other hand, if you just, like me 2 years ago, don't want to do the job you don't care what the vehicle is to replace the income, start following people on Instagram, start changing how your YouTube algorithm looks, start watching videos on how to create a business, start looking at different strategies for business, start looking at different business models, start looking at ways to attract clients, start investigating your own skill sets. What have you already got? What are you missing? Do you need to get new skills? Is there a business strategy that you want to learn more on and try and execute for a year? And start thinking in long term. Don't do what I did. Do not want everything now. Like, play a longer game and just take your time. You will not do this in probably even 12 months. It will take longer. So just take your time and start now to start curating what's going into your head, into your brain each day. What are you consuming? And is it serving you? Are you watching garbage on Netflix because it's subdues your mind? You know you probably shouldn't be doing that. Start putting good stuff into your brain that will eventually change your actions, that will eventually get you to where you want to be. If you want to stay in your job and be comfortable, there's nothing wrong with that. But just make your peace with the fact that you will have to recognize that you never tried to do the thing that you want to try or to live a life that you want to live. And all these things in your mind that are telling you that you're not capable, you're not good enough, you don't have this, you don't have that. Everyone has that. You are no different. You are just a human being, and your brain wants you to stay where you are. But you are capable of great things.
Listening to that reminds me of a quote from Marcus Aurelius, which says, "It is not death that a man should fear, he should fear never beginning to live." Which is a quote in itself, isn't it, man? It's not death that a man should fear, he should fear never beginning to live.
Wow.
And I think that just relates to everything that we're talking about now, back to choosing your regrets. Maybe you're stuck in that middle ground of your career where you're semi comfortable, but maybe still questioning what ifs and thinking about the cinema rocking chair idea. When you are older, what do you want to look back and think about? You're never going to be this young, this fit. You're never going to have this much freedom. And when you are older, you'll look back and you'll probably give anything to be you right now. Go fucking do it.
You're going to be dead. You are going to be dead. And you will never be here again. That's a comforting fact to me. I sometimes think about that, like speaking of Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics and all those great minds. Like, by the way, Marcus Aurelius, I would get a pint with him if he was knocking around. But that phrase, memento mori, do you know that phrase? It means remember death. And it was a phrase, I think it was Marcus Aurelius or one of the other Stoics that says that very often, is just memento mori. Reflect on the fact that you will die. And let that guide your actions now. Because as morbid as it may sound, we all know this. We all know that we will face our mortality and meet our maker one day. And if you can live with that knowledge kind of with you, how can that not steer your actions to change, to do what's right for you, to live in a way that you want to live?
Yeah. the first guest I had on the podcast, David McIntosh, he interviewed Jimmy Carr, and it was this incredible interview. And
Love Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy Carr said to him, and I've banged on about this quote so many times on the podcast, but there are two eternities of dark and a little shaft of light. Was that the quote? Hang on a sec. Let me pull it up so I don't butcher it, because it's really good.
While you're doing that, man, I loved
this out.
I loved Jimmy Carr on Joe Rogan and Chris Williamson. He's a lot more to him than I anticipated.
So much to him. So much to him as just as a person. I can't find that quote because it's so good. I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah, he's got some real depth to him. I love the way he speaks. He can speak about something so poetically. The way he spoke about the subject of comedy and how it's this beautiful dance between you and the audience. And very, very interesting guy.
There are two eternities of dark, and this is a little shaft of light. We die because we are the lucky ones, because we get to live. Life is so special because we are that little shaft of light in the middle of it all.
Wow.
I always have to remind myself of things like that as often as possible, because I think when you think about is mortality the right phrase to use in this context?
Yeah.
You think about the mortality of life, it's like we are only here for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Why not try and make the most of it? I know this is just a podcast saying the most cliche things over and over.
Two white boys on a podcast.
Talking about these cliche things. But like, I love this shit because I've listened to these types of podcasts so much. And I genuinely think it's hearing these small little quotes every now and again, little and often kind of thing, that starts to build up a different way of thinking, a different perspective, and a different mindset that over time has such a monumental shift in who I am as a person. And it does come from hearing these tiny little things over and over and over again.
It's like drip feeding yourself what type of stuff is going into your brain over and over, and that will determine kind of how you think and how you feel. Yeah. And what we were saying a moment ago about the fact that we're going to die is it smacked me in the face about 2 weeks ago. I was on a rooftop in Egypt, and I'd just taken some mushrooms, and I was looking up at the stars, and it was like this. It was like the stars were just this, like, it was like I was in a little bubble, and I could just see off into eternity. And then all of a sudden I could just hear the call to prayer going off, like, hello.
Wow.
In this direction. That there, another one, hello. And I was just like, wow, I'm a long way from what I consider to be home. This place has been going on the whole time I've lived my life, been going to school, doing all this. And it just made me think, wow, I'm so irrelevant. This is just one small pocket of a massive, massive world in one small, tiny piece of time. All the other kingdoms and everything that has came before, all the other 32-year-old guys that thought they were important. I was like,
chatting on podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a bit of a smack in the face.
I love that. Dean, I don't know how this hour's absolutely flown by. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. If someone's thinking, I like this dude, he's chatting some sense, where do you want to send them?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. Hey, Dean Reilly. My last name is spelled Reilly. And then my podcast is called Work Worth Doing. I'm sure you'll be on at some point as well. And yeah, check out the other episodes if you've enjoyed the chat. Hopefully it's of value to you.
For those listening as well, I really do recommend listening to the episode with what's his second name?
Tommy Lewis.
Tommy Lewis.
Yeah, episode
really,
15.
Really, really recommend it, because that's the first one I heard of yours. And Tommy's an incredible guy. And I think just hearing his story, and you share a little bit of your story as well, of kind of transitioning out of the 9 to 5, similar conversation to what we've had today. But I really do recommend that people listening now go and check out that episode, because for me, it gave me a lot of insight as well.
Appreciate that, man.
Cool. Nice one, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, brother.